Unfortunately, when the law applies, and especially it would generally apply when there's an accident, ignorance is not an excuse.
Good day to everybody. Thank you for joining us. The name is Clive. I'm here to represent the FDIA, and I'm sitting here with Laura Swart. She's going to assist us with some laws and regulations that are required for transporting of cylinders, the gas suppression cylinders that we use in our industry. And hopefully we can get a bit of insight into what's required when we are transporting cylinders. Laura, thank you for your time. So me or the FDIA as contractors, we need a bit of assistance with what is required when gas suppression systems are being serviced. The cylinders need to be removed from site. They got to get onto trucks, and they got to get to the suppliers to get pressure tested and so on. I know that it's a dangerous thing because I've been in the industry for a long time, but possibly for people out there that are relatively new into the gas suppression side of it. So I contact a supplier and I say, I've got a bunch of cylinders that need to be serviced. Where do we go from there? What do I need to be aware of when somebody arrives on site to remove the cylinders for us?
Thank you, Clive. I think one of the problems is people are blissfully unaware that they are transporting dangerous goods. So all the dangerous goods regulations have to be adhered to. What we see in the industry is people transport them on the back of vehicles, inside vehicles, etc. And if they are caught transporting these cylinders in that manner, there are heavy fines to be paid. Not to mention that if there's an accident and resultant damage, they will be held liable. We're talking about very high pressure cylinders, anything from 24 bar up to 300 bar, which is not the type of pressures you want to play around with. We have to follow the Department of Transport regulations. So it's a regulated requirement. It's not a nice to have. It's not a voluntary standard that we follow. With that requirement, we fall under hazardous cargo. As far as the hazardous cargo is concerned, it depends on the gas that you're transporting. In our case, they're all non-flammable gases. That does not mean they're not hazardous. The mere fact that they are either chemicals or high pressure makes them hazardous cargo. I think we need to start with the vehicle itself. It has to be regulated as a vehicle for hazardous cargo. So it has to be licensed and registered under dangerous goods. So there's two license cards that appear on there, not a single license card. The one will be a normal license, your annual license, and the other one will be a dangerous goods license. In order to get that, your vehicle has to be roadworthy every single year, and it has to go through a process, and it has to be listed as a dangerous goods vehicle.
Okay, so if I have got a bucky and I put a cylinder on the back of it, one cylinder, already I'm stepping outside the bounds that I'm allowed to.
100% you're breaking the law.
Okay.
The next thing is that vehicle has to be properly signaged. So you've probably seen on vehicles where they've got hazardous cargo. It's in our industry, it would be a bright orange sign. It's orange and white, and it says we're carrying hazardous cargo. It gives the UN number of what you're transporting. It has an emergency telephone number, and then it also has the various other signs that are required for hazardous cargo. Strangely enough, the one is no matches, no cell phones. The fact that we're carrying non-flammable gas, and once they put out fire, it's irrelevant. Mm-hmm. So there's those specific signs that you have to have on there. In the front of the vehicle, you've got to have, it's a triangular or diamond orange sign, and that must be turned around. So if the cylinders you're transporting are empty, you turn it around so it's not orange. The minute that cylinder is full, it has to show from the front of the vehicle that you are carrying dangerous goods.
Okay, so it's like a diamond shape, and if the cylinders are empty, it's a white diamond on the front of the car, and if it's okay.
And that will help the Metro Police identify that's a hazardous vehicle. you very often get pulled off because they're now going to check you thoroughly. On the side of the vehicle and the back of the vehicle, it also has the hazardous cargo. So it's got the triangle, but it's got more information. So it's got your emergency information and what UN number you're traveling under.
What number?
UN. So that is depending on what type of gas or liquid that you are carrying.
Yeah.
It's got various UN numbers that are assigned to it. So now we've covered the registration of the vehicle and the markings on the vehicle. The next item to look at is your driver. As a driver of dangerous goods, he has to not just have a PRDP, he also has to have a dangerous goods license.
For people that don't know, PRDP is?
It's a professional driving permit.
Okay, right.
So that's what your bus drivers, your taxi drivers, people, your Uber drivers, they need a PRDP. In other words, they have to be registered to carry passengers that are not family members or voluntarily, well, they are voluntarily, but to carry other people. The minute you're carrying dangerous cargo, you need the PRDP as well as the dangerous goods. In other words, every year, your driver has to go for reassessment training, and he has to redo his driver's license. If he's carrying a passenger, be it somebody off the street that is going to assist him in loading and offloading, they also need a PRDP, believe. So they have to be registered. Yes.
Oh my goodness. So if I'm driving along and I pick up a labourer on the side of the road to assist with the physical loading and unloading of the cylinder, do they also need the PRDP?
They need to be trained to move with hazardous cargo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So the next item is on your vehicle. If you've got a hydraulic tail lift, that tail lift has to be kept maintained in accordance with the regulations, which is normally every 2 years. You send it in for every year. You actually send it in for a service, and you need to keep that documentation on hand. The other documentation you need to keep in your vehicle is what they call a TREM card. So that's a transport emergency card, which gives a lot of information on your company, your vehicle, what the emergency procedures are, etc. And you also need to have all the material safety data sheets for the different gases that you're carrying, be it the inert gases or the liquefied gases. You must have a separate TREM card for every single gas that you're going to be transporting.
Okay.
So it's actually quite onerous, which is why a lot of the larger suppliers will do the transporting for you, because the smaller companies don't have the ability to do that. It's also very important, if you get in a transport company to transport your goods to a site, that you make them aware of the fact that it's hazardous cargo and you supply them with the material safety data sheets.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to hire a courier company to go and fetch the cylinders for me. They've got to be aware that it's a hazardous goods, and they've got to then tell me that they've got all the safety procedures in place and the driver's got his safety procedures in place and all of that. At that point, is it still my responsibility, or is it the courier's company's? Just obviously, they've said to me they got the information in line. It's my responsibility to make sure they have got that in line.
Well, they're the ones transporting the
Correct,
goods, so then it falls on them. So you need to make them aware of the hazard, and they need to make sure they're compliant.
Okay.
It's not your job to police them as compliance.
Yeah, because they've reasonable man test. I've asked the questions, they've said they're good, so we're assuming.
I don't think we should assume, but I would say definitely you need to make them aware and put the liability on them in writing and supply them with the material safety data sheets and have a record of that so that they know that.
Yeah. Oh, that's quite a lot to think about, because I know that there's a lot of people that sling it on the back of a pickup truck and away we go.
We see it all the time, and that's why I think it's important that we have these discussions and make people aware.
No, absolutely.
Because unfortunately, when the law applies, and especially it would generally apply when there's an accident, ignorance is not an excuse. The other thing to be aware of is that if you are transporting a hazardous cargo, the reason that you have all that signage is the minute there's an accident, immediately Department of Transport sends out a hazmat cleanup team. So they need all that information on hand. And so if it's not available, you can be held liable.
Yeah, because they don't, if you haven't got that signage visible, they won't know that there's any hazardous material there. So also the people reacting to the accident won't know they could be exposed to hazardous chemicals.
Well, the company who's transporting it the fines are incredibly high there. You know, it's extremely cumbersome.
Okay. All right, good stuff. Well, I think that covers most of what we wanted to discuss now. So awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure we will bang on your door again to discuss some other interesting stuff.